January 6th is famous for one failed coup attempt. There was a very different kind of coup on January 6th this year. And unfortunately, this one was successful. It took all of 6 days, less than a week, into 2023, for Vince McMahon to weasel his way back into WWE. Now, of course, he never really left. He's still the majority shareholder. He still owns the thing. But now he is officially back. Less than a month ago, on Sound Off 787, I talked about the last Wall Street Journal story that came out, which suggested that McMahon was looking to return to the company and that he regretted stepping away in the first place on account of bad advice that he received. It's always somebody else's fault. So that was the report from the Wall Street Journal last month was, oh, he got bad advice, and if he would have just stuck it out, all that controversy last summer would have blown over, and he would have been fine. And I warned at the time, I said that if 2022 was the fall of Vince McMahon, then 2023 might end up being the resurrection of Vince McMahon. And that just the idea of it sounded like a Michael Myers movie. 3 weeks later, here we are. There were new allegations last month that we hadn't even heard about before, of a spa manager accusing him of sexual misconduct back in 2011, something that I'm sure just delighted their board of directors. There were reports that nobody in the company had any desire to see him back in any capacity. One higher up in the company told Fightful at the time that it would be a very selfish move for him to come back under any circumstances. Yet, selfish actions are what led to him leaving in the first place. And that says a lot about what we saw this week. The Wall Street Journal broke yet another story. They broke the news on Thursday that Vince McMahon, the majority owner and former chief executive of WWE, plans to return to the company to pursue a sale of the business. And that he has told the company that he is electing himself and 2 former co-presidents whom he fired 2 years ago, George Barrios and Michelle Wilson, to the board of directors. They also said that he expects to assume the role of executive chairman. So he would effectively be leveraging his power as the majority shareholder to force his way back into the company. Later that evening, McMahon issued a press release through his own PR firm, totally independent of WWE, confirming the story. They put it out over PR Newswire, which is a service that I have used many times over the years for my clients. In the release, he said that he has taken necessary actions to position the company to capitalize on a unique opportunity, and now he sounds like Dario Cueto, to maximize long-term value for all WWE shareholders. The actions communicated to the board of directors today via written consent include the election to the board of Mr. McMahon, as well as Michelle Wilson and George Barrios, former WWE co-presidents and board members, and the requisite removal from the board of 3 directors. Mr. McMahon expects to assume the role of executive chairman of the board. His new role will enable unified decision-making through the company's upcoming media rights negotiations and a parallel full review of the company's strategic alternatives, which McMahon believes is the right course of action and in the best interests of WWE and shareholders amidst the current dynamics in the media and entertainment industry. As Mr. McMahon has communicated to the board, he believes there is a narrow window of opportunity to create significant value for all shareholders and that to do so, the alternatives review must occur in tandem with the media rights negotiations. He also expressed to the board that he believes the 2 initiatives require Mr. McMahon's direct participation, leadership, and support as controlling shareholder. He said, WWE has an exceptional management team in place, and I do not intend for my return to have any impact on their roles, duties, or responsibilities. Oh, I'm sure. I'm sure that's his intent right now. That may not be what his intent is 6 months from now, but it is his intent not to mess with the management team that they currently have in place. He made a power play, as is his right to do. But that's what he did. He made a power play. So many dunces on my timeline the past 72 hours saying, but the majority shareholder is Vince McMahon, so he can do it. right, with the little shrug emoji. Yes, you clowns. I'm well aware that he could do that. Just because you can do something does not mean that you should do it. The man was forced out of his own company in disgrace. I'm aware that the stock price has soared since the news broke. It was as high as $89 a share. I don't know what it closed at. I think it closed at 87 or 84. It was as high as $89 a share on Friday, after opening the week in the high 60s. That is not because Vince McMahon is back. It's because there's talk of a sale, and Wall Street likes that. The stockholders like the idea of a sale because it means lots of money for them. Him engineering his little hostile takeover, though, could backfire when you consider the reason he felt the need to step down in the first place was because all the allegations against him could potentially harm the company's ability to make any future deals, like selling the company. He knows that, and he doesn't care. Because he's a fucking egomaniac who can't stand the thought of life moving on without him. The very next day, this all became official in a filing with the SEC that Vince McMahon is officially back on the WWE Board of Directors, as are Barrios and Wilson, with the three of them replacing Jeffrey Speed, who was part of the board's internal investigation into McMahon, Joe Ellen Lyons Dillon, and Alan Wexler. 2 additional board members promptly resigned after the announcement, most interesting being Manjit Singh, and the reason that's interesting is because he was the one who led the investigation into the allegations against Vince McMahon, and was really the one pushing hard for the company to do its due diligence and investigate him. He resigned, as did Ignaz Lahoud. So they're gone. So not only did Vince force his way back onto the board, he also changed some of the company's bylaws, one of which is the requirement that any media deals and/or company sale be approved by him, which just sounds almost like a formality since he was the majority shareholder anyway, but now it's in writing. But it's worse than that because there was the initial letter that McMahon sent to the board last month, letting them know what his intentions were, and the board responded. They said that they were open to working with him as far as a possible sale, but they were not in support of his returning due to the ongoing concerns of the government investigations into him. So this is what, again, this is all public knowledge now. I'm going to read to you from what the board said in response, or what the company said in response to Vince McMahon. So with respect to your suggestion regarding a process to evaluate strategic alternatives and your role in that process, we are prepared to initiate such a process and are happy to work with you to ensure that this is the best process for the company and all of its shareholders. Indeed, we would welcome you and your advisors playing an important role in that process, including working together to identify the full range of potential alternatives and counterparties. To that end, we suggest that your bankers and lawyers meet with our bankers and lawyers. Have your people meet with our people, basically, in the first week of January to discuss how to best move forward together with this process. Although we welcome your participation in the launch of a strategic alternatives review process, it is also our unanimous view that your return to the company at this time while government investigations into your conduct by the U.S. Attorney's Office and SEC are still pending would not be a prudent move from a shareholder value perspective. This determination is based on a variety of factors, including non-public information the board has become aware of, and the risks to the company and its shareholders of placing a greater spotlight on these issues. The attached draft letter agreement provides that the board will not agree to the shareholder demand that the company files suit against you on the conditions that you confirm your commitment to repay all of the investigation-related expenses incurred by the company, and that you agree not to serve as an officer, director, or employee of the company during the pendency of the government investigations. Vince didn't like that response and snapped back via email on New Year's Eve with this. I appreciate your timely response to my December 20th letter. However, it is surprising that you did not address what I had sought to make clear in my letter. Namely, that we have a unique but narrow window of opportunity to maximize shareholder value by combining the upcoming media rights negotiations with a strategic review process. The board acknowledges is the right course of action for our shareholders. and that the only way to fully capture that opportunity is by having me, the company's founder and controlling shareholder, return as executive chairman at this critical time so I can work alongside the management team to unify the decision-making related to these two interconnected initiatives. I would like to be clear that unless I have direct involvement and input as executive chairman from the outset, I will not be able to support or approve any media rights deals or strategic transaction. This position is not driven by self-interest or a lack of confidence in the company's management team, but rather by my commitment to doing what is best for WWE and all of its shareholders, and by my strong belief that maximizing the outcome of these processes will require close coordination and unified and efficient decision-making. I sincerely hope we can work together to unlock this tremendous value potential. Regarding the shareholder demand letter, I'm glad to learn that following a review of the shareholder demand, the board has determined that the demand does not warrant any further legal action. However, it is unfortunate that the board would seek to use this conclusion to attempt to extract an agreement from me not to return to the company. Any construct along these lines is entirely unacceptable. And then he goes on to talk about the investigations and his cooperation with it, and he would not interfere in any government investigations or special committees and blah, blah, blah. So let's break this down. The company's board of directors, which includes his own daughter, his son-in-law, and Nick Khan, unanimously agreed that his return would not be beneficial to the company or its shareholders at this time, including a mention of non-public information the board has become aware of that, if it were to become public, could do harm to the company. And God only knows what that is. And he still didn't care. Because this is not about what is best for WWE. He can hide behind that all he wants. This is not just about that. This is not just about money. Of course, that's part of it, but it's not about that as much as it's about feeding his own ego. That's really what this is about. You don't think he hasn't been plotting this since the end of July, when he first stepped down? Plotting a way to get back in? You know, he has such great faith in the existing management team, including Nick Khan, who has brokered some pretty big deals for them, that he doesn't trust them enough to make a deal to sell the company without him being directly involved. Vince McMahon does not need to be the executive chairman of the company to have a say in whether or not the company can be sold and to whom it can be sold. He is the majority shareholder. If he wanted a final say in that decision, he could have reached out to them and made that very clear, and that would have probably sufficed. You heard what the board said in response. We welcome the opportunity for you to, come on in to at least be part of the process, but all this other stuff, we don't think that the timing of you coming back would be beneficial to the company. He did not give a shit. No, what he decided to do was basically hold his own company hostage by saying, if you don't give me exactly what I'm asking for, then not only will I not approve of a possible sale, I won't approve of any media rights deals that you might make. Knowing full well that this is a critical year for the company because their media rights deals are expiring in 2024. Either you let me back in or I'm going to make your lives very difficult. And to all the people saying, well, he can't do this, he can't do that, he can't come back and run creative, he would be violating SEC rules. When has Vince McMahon ever cared about the rules? You think he gives a shit about any of that? So then in 6 months, he'll file an amended document outlining all of his new responsibilities. This company is on the hook for hush money payments that he made to women to keep them quiet. Do you honestly believe that he cares? He totally handcuffed them. They didn't want him back, and he put a gun to their head and dared them to make him pull the trigger. In these documents, it says also, while the company is exploring potential deals for a sale, there is no assurance that this process will result in a transaction. There is no guarantee that they will sell. Just because Vince wants to sell does not mean that they will. Variety had an article on Friday that the time for a sale may have already come and gone last summer, at the same time that he stepped down when all that information came out. That may have been the best time for them to do this. And it rightly points out that a lot of the big media, conglomerates, they're losing their ass because streaming is not profitable for them. Ad dollars are shifting away from television. and they may not be as likely to spend big on live sports rights. The bubble may be about to burst, which would not be good news for WWE or for AEW, because they have their own rights negotiations coming up later this year. Now, I have no doubt the company will be sold. I said WWE was primed for a sale as soon as Vince and Nick Khan started firing people and killing them off like an episode of Squid Game. But do you honestly think a year from now, if there is still no sale, that he's just going to go, well, we tried. I guess I'll go back home now. No, he's never leaving now. He is not going anywhere. And now that he's back, he's only going to get more involved, not less. WWE gave a comment to Fightful, very specifically saying that the creative process is not supposed to change with Vince McMahon back in the company. Well, hey, I'm sure that's what they believe right now. There are some people who are already convinced he never left creative in the first, whether he's just texting people or whatever, that he never truly left in the first place. And I didn't really buy that. You see all the talent moves that Triple H has made, some of which Vince McMahon never would have approved of. All the people Vince got rid of that Triple H has brought back. But there's not a fucking chance that he won't at least try to get some measure of influence back in the creative direction of this company. Give me a break. I don't trust a word out of any of these people's mouths. And I'll bet you anything there are people in that company that feel the same way, and they don't believe a word they say either. And they have every right to feel that way. If they don't, they should. Fightful heard from dozens of people within WWE in the hours after the first story broke on Thursday who were floored by the announcement that Vince might be coming back. Why? They shouldn't be. Not only was this always possible, it was likely. The Wall Street Journal put a fucking article out 3 weeks ago talking about this. That this was already being discussed. They said the idea that Vince could return to creative, this is the people who talked to Fightful, that the idea that Vince could return to creative was a common concern among talent. One talent said that finding out all of this online was scary, as opposed to the company, telling them what was going on. And that it's Vince, so they don't believe a word the man says. Another talent said that there would be a roster uproar if Vince ever returns to head up creative. No, they won't. I mean, that's cute that they would say that, but we've already been over this before. Remember the third-party band stuff? And how upset so many people were? I said the only thing that would work, if there were enough people on that roster who disagreed with that edict and were that outraged over that edict, was strength in numbers. If that many talents were upset about it, and what happened? Nothing. There's not going to be any talent revolt. They'll revolt quietly. They'll sulk quietly. But they have every right to be concerned right now. And if you're someone who Triple H recently hired or brought back to the company, you've got to be sweating bullets right now. William Regal just started his new role as VP with the company this week. How do you think he's feeling hearing this news? Tony Khan, again, he was having fun with this on Friday. All right, everybody at work is being so nice to me the past 24 hours. I wonder why. It must be belated holiday spirit, he said. Yeah, it must be. Another higher up in the company told Fightful, I can't count how many interviews I have read or people I talked to outside the company that said, Vince liked me, but I got fired. He didn't like you, or they wouldn't have been fired during a pandemic. I always laughed when I would read about talent saying that after they were released. Oh, Vince liked me. It wasn't Vince. He liked me. I got along great with him. It's just one of those things. He didn't like you. If he liked you, he wouldn't have fired you. But it was easy to make Johnny Ace or Bruce Pritchard the scapegoat because they were the yes men, right? Or Nick Khan. But at the end of the day, it was Vince McMahon's decision. Nobody else's. Vince McMahon fired you. Oh, it wasn't Vince. As if Vince had no idea what was going on. There wasn't a single fucking decision in that company that was made without Vince McMahon either knowing about it or calling for it himself. But these people had convinced themselves that it wasn't Vince. So when I saw that quote, I immediately laughed. Some of these people, I swear, it's like they're part of a cult. It really is. WWE held an all-hands-on-deck meeting with employees, not talent. This is just for employees. On Friday afternoon, it only lasted 10 minutes. They took no questions. They officially announced that Vince was back on the board of directors. They claimed there would be no changes to management or their responsibilities at this time. Keywords being at this time. So for now, Stephanie, Triple H, Nick Khan, they're all safe in their positions until they're not. They pushed the move as a big positive for the future rights deals and a possible sale, and that with Vince being back, now they would all be on the same page and maximizing their potential heading into the future. They said they would be looking at any sale opportunities first, before any rights deals, since it would be more lucrative financially than just selling off, the pieces, selling off the rights to Raw and SmackDown and NXT. But they also emphasized that a sale may not happen, and it should not be assumed that it would. And it was also mentioned that a possible avenue could be to take the company private again, if it was the best outcome for the shareholders. They're not taking the company private again. Don't get too excited. They said it's an option, not that it is something that they will actually be doing. And that was it. It was described as very much a rally the troops, rah-rah kind of meeting to try to put a positive spin on things, even though the board of directors, and I cannot stress this enough, including Stephanie, Triple H, and Nick Khan, all unanimously agreed that it would not be a good idea for Vince to come back as the chairman. But they have to put a happy face on things. This is what happens when you are 77 years old and you are bored. And this is all that you've done your entire life. He is bored and he wants back in. And he got what he wanted. What this means for Stephanie and Triple H long term, because I have people asking me, what does this mean for Stephanie and Triple H? Nobody knows. Not even Stephanie and Triple H know. It remains to be seen. Something was definitely going on with Stephanie when she announced that she was taking that leave of absence last year. Whether there were issues between her and her father that we're not aware of, or her being on the board, she was aware of the allegations and the emails going around, and she just wanted to sort of get out in front of it all before the bad news broke, because when she stepped away, this was, I think, weeks before that first Wall Street Journal story. But she stepped away. The company then fed negative comments about her job performance to Business Insider. Remember that? Then she ends up being asked to take over as the co-CEO with Nick Khan. Triple H, we saw what Vince did to his team in the NXT brand. I'm not going to say that Triple H is on borrowed time, but could I see at some point a power-sharing type of arrangement down the road where Vince gains a say in creative again, even with Triple H still being there? Yes! I could see that. Everything is on the table now. I'm not trying to be all doom and gloom. I know it's going to come off that way, all doom and gloom. I'm not trying to just be doom and gloom and say that everything is going straight to hell. Maybe it doesn't. But this entire episode demonstrates to me that so long as Vince McMahon is the controlling shareholder and now the chairman of this company, the executive chairman, nobody can predict what he might do next. Anybody saying that he's going to be back in Gorilla with a headset on, you can't be sure of that, but you also can't say that he won't be. Because so long as he's around, it's up to him what he wants to do. And there is no law that is going to stop him from doing what he wants. He just changed the company bylaws to make it impossible for them to do deals without his approval. The rules and the laws, they don't apply to powerful people like Vince McMahon. They will always find ways to skirt the rules to get what they want. And I'm sure Vince McMahon does not like being told what to do. He doesn't like being told no. But it's that uncertainty now that hangs over this company and everybody in it like a black cloud so long as he's around. Now, as far as any potential sale, he's not wrong in thinking that it would be better to sell the company outright than piece together deals for individual rights. But don't think that part of his play here is not to try to leverage a deal that would see him maintain power in this company. Of course he wants to approve of any sale, not just because he's got majority voting rights, but because he would only approve of a deal that keeps him in power in some way. And I understand that to a degree. I get it. It's his baby. He ran the company for 40 years. He would want to be connected to it in some way, but how much, right? That's the fear. How much? I don't think he can help himself. Right now, he says, well, nothing is changing. I don't trust him. I don't believe him. I think he only sells if he can be part of the package. Now, according to a CNBC report, WWE has hired JP Morgan to help advise the company on a potential sale. The report says that if a deal occurs, it would likely happen in the next 3 to 6 months. So we're not going to have to wait very long, probably, to find out what's going on here. This is according to people familiar with the matter. So who are the potential players here? In my predictions for this year, I said that Comcast would have the best shot because NBC Universal already does so much business with WWE. I mean, they own the rights to Raw and NXT, and they have the streaming deal with Peacock. I thought they would get the SmackDown rights away from Fox and put it on NBC. That was one of my predictions for this year going into the negotiations. I think they're in the best position. I still feel that way. I think Comcast / NBC Universal is still in the number one spot. There's Fox, which already has the rights for SmackDown. There's Disney. People like to mention Disney and the mouse. And it might seem far-fetched, Disney buying WWE, but WWE already has streaming deals with Disney in parts of Asia. And Disney is the majority owner of Hulu, which has second-day streaming rights for Raw, SmackDown, and NXT for the first month after they air. WWE recently extended their deal with Hulu through September of next year to time it so that their Hulu deal, their Raw deal with USA, and their SmackDown deal with Fox, they all expire at the same time now. Makes it easier to just move all of it to one place if they want to. So they're already doing business. Disney is already doing business with WWE. But Disney also made a $50 billion deal a few years back to acquire 21st Century Fox. And they've had some financial problems stemming from that. Would they want to make another big acquisition? Now, this wouldn't be $50 billion, but would they want to make another big acquisition when they're still feeling the effects of the Fox merger? That, to me, that's the question when it comes to Disney. That makes it less likely. Warner Brothers Discovery is an interesting one. I think I still look at them as the least likely of all these possibilities, just because, my God, all the cost cutting. You know, every few weeks, you go to Deadline.com or some of these trade publications, and all you're hearing about is the bloodletting at Warner Brothers Discovery. They are cutting costs like crazy. But what a storyline that would be if they bought WWE outright and then iced out AEW as a result when their TV rights come up. Imagine WWE airing on TNT and TBS and AEW striking a deal maybe with USA. It would feel like Bizarro World. I think this is the least likely option. Amazon is a name that has been mentioned. Right? They've made some deals. They made a $1 billion deal with the NFL to stream Thursday Night Football. Then there's Endeavor. And if I had to rank these, I have Comcast in the number one likeliest spot to buy WWE. I would put Endeavor at number 2. I would put them right behind Comcast. The president of Endeavor, which is the parent company of UFC, said in October that buying WWE would be interesting and worth exploring. And when they bought the UFC, if you remember, they kept Dana White in charge. They would probably want Vince McMahon to stick around too. But the website Front Office Sports had a story out on Friday claiming that Saudi Arabia is in play now, that Saudi Arabia's public investment fund, which is chaired by the Crown Prince, could be a potential bidder. They already have $620 billion in assets, billion with a B. WWE, they already have a deal through 2027 with the Saudi Entertainment Authority. They're the majority owner of Newcastle United. Vince is already doing business with the regime there. Yet another potential deal that could be contingent on Vince McMahon sticking around in a position of power. You know, the thing with Endeavor and UFC is that they seem to have stayed mostly hands-off as far as the day-to-day operations of the UFC, which I think would be a good thing. If they took that same approach with WWE, I mean, unless you just don't like WWE the way that it's currently run, I think that would be a positive approach, right? If they bought the company, but then largely sort of stayed in the background and stayed hands-off. But you don't think they would make that deal? is to go back to the Saudis. You don't think that WWE wouldn't make that deal if the dollar amount was high enough? They would have to. It's their responsibility to make as much money as possible for their shareholders. I mean, unless there was some other reason for them not to do the deal, if they have 2, 3, 4 people bidding and the Saudis are putting up $10 billion, you can't say no to that. Who would I like to see buy the company? Whoever it is. I would hope that it is a company that has stability, that isn't just going to buy it and then gut it and make it worse, or put more handcuffs content-wise on what they do on television. I like the idea of the Endeavor hands-off approach. With a Comcast deal, maybe... Look, with Comcast and all the properties and everything, I mean, Universal Studios, maybe we get a physical WWE Hall of Fame at Universal Studios at their City Walk. I think that would be a great attraction. I've been waiting for one of those now for years. But at the end of the day, though, I want people running it who know how to run a wrestling company, who know something about wrestling and what WWE does, if they're going to be the ones running this company. WWE can call itself whatever it wants. What they still do at the end of the day is pro wrestling. And I worry about the company falling into the hands of people who don't know the first thing about wrestling, trying to make it or remake it into their own image of what it should be, like it's Stars on Ice or something. As a wrestling fan, that is my greatest hope, is that they keep the right people in place, or they put the right people in power who are going to make the product better and not make it worse. There was a time when I would have said Vince McMahon would be that person, but no more. So that is what I would be most concerned with. WWE is the number one brand. They are the number one company in the world in terms of business, in the business that it does when it comes to pro wrestling and the visibility that it has, the mainstream visibility. And as WWE goes, so goes the rest of the wrestling business. If WWE is thriving and doing well, that might rub off on other companies. If WWE suddenly were to shut down and go away, or if they're sold and then whoever buys them guts the company, or it's mismanaged into oblivion because these people don't know what the fuck they're doing, that only hurts everybody else. You know, it's like if WWE were to get, let's say, forget all this is happening. We're heading into the TV rights negotiations, and let's say WWE makes a big deal, right? They triple the amount of money they're making now. I mean, that could only benefit Tony Khan when it comes to negotiating stuff for AEW, because these companies and networks are going to look and see, oh, you know, WWE, boy, you know, they produce a lot of weekly content, and, you know, they just struck a big deal. Now we have this secondary brand, but maybe it helps AEW. That's what I say. You know, it's a situation where you can look at what AEW does and what WWE does, and you can see the differences. There's similarities and there's differences. But at the end of the day, how WWE goes, I believe, so goes everybody else. That's just the way it works. And if WWE is thriving and doing well, I believe that can only help other companies. Not all of those fans that leave are going to flock to AEW or these other promotions. We saw that with the death of WCW. If people were to stop watching WWE, that does not mean that these other companies are going to pick all these people up. Most of those fans, when WCW died and went away, after being mismanaged into oblivion, those fans simply disappeared. They simply stopped watching. And WWE spent the next 20 years trying to bring back a lot of those lapsed fans from the Monday Night War era. I don't want to see something like that happen again. That's one of my concerns. So the future of WWE is very much up in the air right now. Not in the sense that the company is in jeopardy of going out of business or anything like that. Financially, the company is as stable as it's ever been. But what the company will look like if it is sold, and what it will look like with Vince McMahon back in whatever role he claims to be in. Because I can't envision a scenario where he sells or agrees to sell and isn't part of the package in some way. I didn't think it could get any crazier than the year we had in 2022. And already 2023 just said, hold my beer.